Ladies and gentlemen, let me tell you one thing. The people who get hurt the most are not the cruel ones, not the loud ones, not the selfish ones. It's the ones who listen more than they speak, who give without keeping score, who say it's okay while something inside them is breaking. Nice people don't get hurt because they are weak. They get hurt because they love deeply in a world that often rewards carelessness, manipulation, and speed over sincerity. And if you've ever felt used, overlooked, or emotionally drained for being kind, this isn't a flaw. It's a pattern you were never taught how to protect yourself from. Today, we change that. Not by becoming cold, not by becoming cruel, but by understanding why nice people get hurt the most, and the 7 powerful shifts that allow you to keep your kindness without letting the world break you. The first key point is this quiet assumption nice people carry without realizing it, that the heart they live with is the heart everyone else has too. You walk into conversations believing honesty is the default setting. You trust words because you mean yours. You expect care because you give it freely. And this is not foolishness. This is innocence shaped by integrity. But the world is not a mirror. It does not always reflect back what you offer. Some people are not operating from empathy. They are operating from advantage. And when you assume shared values, you lower your guard in places where awareness should stand. You see, when you live with a clean heart, it never occurs to you that someone could smile and plan harm at the same time. You don't suspect hidden motives because you don't have any. You believe misunderstandings can be fixed with a conversation because that is how you fix things. So when someone disappoints you, you search for reasons, not patterns. You tell yourself they didn't mean it. You explain their behavior to yourself until it feels acceptable. Not because you are weak, but because your mind is trying to protect the image of goodness you believe the world runs on. But here is where the pain begins to form quietly. When you assume everyone thinks like you give trust too early. You share access before it is earned. You open doors just because someone knocked politely. And some people are very good at knocking. They study kindness. They recognize it the way a thief recognizes an unlocked window. Not with hatred, not with anger, just with opportunity. They don't wake up thinking of hurting you. They wake up thinking of benefiting from you. And because you don't think that way, you never see it coming. Nice people often confuse familiarity with safety. If someone talks like you, laughs like you, or shares a few personal stories, you feel a bond forming. You think connection means alignment. But similarity is not sincerity. Someone can sound like you and still not stand for what you stand for. And when their actions finally reveal the truth, the pain cuts deeper. Because it feels personal. You don't just feel hurt by them. You feel betrayed by your own judgment. You start questioning your instincts, your heart, your ability to read people at all. What hurts most is not what they did. It's the realization that you gave something sacred to someone who never respected it. Your time, your emotional energy, your loyalty, and because you assume they shared your moral compass, you feel shocked when they walk in a direction you would never choose. It feels like discovering that you were playing a game with rules only you were following. And suddenly, your kindness feels like a disadvantage, even though it was never meant to be one. There is a moment many nice people experience but rarely talk about. The moment when you replay every conversation in your head, wondering where you missed the sign. You tell yourself you should have seen it. You should have known better. And instead of learning discernment, you punish your heart. You start thinking maybe being good is the problem. Maybe caring too much invites pain. But that thought is not wisdom. It is fear speaking after disappointment. The truth is, your heart is not the issue. The assumption is the belief that everyone deserves the same level of trust simply because you are capable of giving it. Trust is not a gift you owe. It is a bridge built slowly, step by step, with observation, not hope. When you stop assuming people share your values, you don't become suspicious. You become present. who listen more carefully. You watch how people act when there is nothing to gain. You notice consistency instead of charm. This shift does not harden you, it grounds you. You begin to understand that goodness does not require blindness. You can be warm without being open to everyone. You can be generous without being available to misuse. And when you finally accept that your heart is rare, not common, you stop handing it to anyone who reaches out. You begin to honor it the way it deserves to be honored, with awareness, patience, and self-respect. The second key point is the way nice people mistake patience for love, as if enduring discomfort is proof of depth. You tell yourself that staying quiet is maturity, that waiting is understanding, that holding on is loyalty. You believe love is something you demonstrate by how much you can tolerate without breaking. So you stay in situations that drain you, not because you are happy there, but because you don't want to give up too soon. You think leaving means you didn't try hard enough. And slowly, without noticing, patience turns into a habit of self-denial. There is a silent pride that comes with being the one who stays. You tell yourself you are strong because you can carry more weight than others. You become the calm one, the forgiving one, the one who doesn't react. But strength is not the absence of limits, and patience is not meant to be endless. When love asks you to ignore your own discomfort again and again, it stops being love and starts becoming a quiet erosion of self-worth. You are not being patient anymore. You are being slowly worn down. Nice people often believe that if they just wait a little longer, things will improve. That one more conversation, one more sacrifice, one more chance will finally bring balance. This hope feels noble, but it can be dangerous because hope without honesty becomes denial. You start editing your expectations instead of addressing the problem. You shrink your needs so the relationship can survive. And each time you do that, you teach yourself that your feelings are negotiable. What makes this especially painful is that you don't even realize you are hurting yourself. You call it love because love sounds beautiful. You don't call it fear, even though fear is often underneath it. Fear of being alone, fear of disappointing someone, fear of starting over. So patience becomes a way to avoid difficult choices. It becomes a way to delay change. And while you wait for others to grow, you quietly stop growing yourself. There is a moment when patience crosses a line. It is the moment you feel tired, not from effort, but from pretending. When you wake up already exhausted by the thought of another day of understanding. When your silence feels heavy instead of peaceful. That is not love asking you to stay. That is your intuition asking you to listen. Love does not require you to disappear. It does not demand that you sacrifice your emotional health to prove devotion. Char. Yui love respects time, but it also respects truth. It listens when something feels wrong. It does not confuse endurance with commitment. When you begin to see this clearly, patience becomes what it was always meant to be, a choice, not a burden. You stop staying out of obligation and start choosing based on alignment. And in that shift, you don't lose your kindness. You reclaim it in a way that finally includes yourself. The third key point is how nice people speak softly about their pain, as if keeping their voice low will keep the peace. You learn early that being easy to be around makes life smoother. So you swallow words before they reach your lips. You tell yourself it's not worth the tension, that it will pass, that you can handle it. And maybe you can. But handling pain silently does not make it smaller. It just makes it invisible. And when pain becomes invisible, it stops receiving care. You become skilled at downplaying what hurts you. You turn real wounds into jokes, into casual comments, into quick smiles that say everything is fine. You do this not because you are dishonest, but because you don't want to make others uncomfortable. You believe your strength is measured by how little noise you make. So you speak in half-truths. You say, "It's okay," when it isn't. You say, "Don't worry about it," when you are already carrying it home with you. Over time, this habit teaches people to overlook the weight you are holding. Silence has a strange way of training the world. When you don't express your limits, people assume you don't have any. They pile expectations on you, not out of cruelty but out of habit. You become the one who understands, the one who adjusts, the one who absorbs impact. And because you rarely protest, no one thinks to check how you are doing. Your calm becomes a mask others rely on, while underneath your emotional reserves quietly thin out. What makes this especially painful is that you start to believe your own silence means you should be okay. You question your right to feel hurt because you never spoke up when it began. You tell yourself that if it mattered enough, you would have said something sooner. But this is not weakness, this is conditioning. You were taught that harmony matters more than honesty, that being liked matters more than being heard, and so your needs learn to wait in the background. There comes a point when silence stops protecting you and starts betraying you, when the weight you carry shows up as exhaustion, distance, or quiet resentment. That is your inner voice asking to be acknowledged. Speaking up does not mean becoming loud or aggressive, it means becoming honest. It means allowing your pain to exist in the open, where it can be understood instead of ignored. When you give your pain a voice, you are not creating conflict, you are creating clarity. The fourth key point is how nice people over-explain instead of drawing lines, believing that if they just choose the right words, understanding will finally arrive. You think clarity comes from longer sentences, softer tones, better timing. So you explain your feelings carefully, gently, as if handling glass. You replay conversations in your head, adjusting phrases you wish you had said differently. You believe that being understood is the same as being respected. But understanding does not always lead to change, especially when someone already knows they are hurting you. You see, over-explaining often comes from a good place. You want to be fair, you want to be reasonable, you want to make sure no one feels attacked. So you keep talking even after the message is clear. You justify your boundaries instead of stating them. You defend your feelings instead of honoring them. And in doing so, you unknowingly teach people that your limits are flexible, open for discussion, open for negotiation, open for delay. Words become a cushion that softens the impact of behavior that should have consequences. There is a subtle imbalance that forms here. You are doing emotional labor while the other person is doing nothing. You are carrying the weight of making things right while they remain comfortable where they are. And comfort is powerful. When someone faces no consequence for crossing a line, they learn that the line is imaginary. They may nod, agree, even apologize. But if nothing changes after the conversation, the message was received but not respected. And respect is not built through explanation alone. Nice people often mistake repeated explanations for patience, not realizing it slowly drains their authority. Each time you explain again, you send a quiet signal that your boundary is optional, that it can be pushed, tested, ignored, and revisited later. You start to feel tired, not because you are misunderstood, but because you are unheard in action. And deep down, you know it. That heavy feeling after yet another conversation is not confusion. It is recognition. Drawing a line does not require anger. It does not need long speeches. A line is simple. It is calm. It is consistent. It is what you do, not what you say. When you stop over-explaining, you stop begging for validation. You let your behavior speak where your words were ignored. This is not cruelty. It is clarity. And clarity, when practiced with self-respect, teaches people exactly how to treat you without another explanation. The fifth key point is how nice people try to fix others, mistaking compassion for responsibility. You see someone's wounds before you see their behavior. You notice their pain and assume it explains everything. So when they hurt you, you don't focus on the impact. You focus on the backstory. You tell yourself they're struggling, that they've been through a lot, that if anyone understands them, it's you. And slowly, you take on a role you were never assigned, carrying emotional weight that does not belong to you. You begin to believe that your patience can heal what their awareness has not touched, that your love can reach places their own effort has avoided. You listen longer, stay later, forgive quicker. You adjust your expectations so they don't feel pressure to grow. And while this may look like kindness, it quietly shifts the balance. Relationships are meant to be shared spaces, not rescue missions. When you become the one doing all the emotional lifting, connection turns into obligation and care turns into exhaustion. What makes this pattern so difficult to break is that it feels meaningful. Fixing gives you purpose. It makes you feel needed. You confuse being needed with being valued. But being needed is not the same as being cherished. Someone can depend on you and still disregard you. Someone can lean on your strength while refusing to develop their own. And each time you step in to repair what they won't address, you delay the moment they face themselves. There is a quiet cost to this role. You begin to neglect your own needs because someone else's pain feels more urgent. You tell yourself you can rest later, that once they're okay, you'll be okay too. But later never comes. Their healing becomes a moving target, always just one more effort away. And in the meantime, your own emotional energy thins out. You become tired in a way sleep cannot fix, because the exhaustion is not physical. It comes from carrying what was never yours to carry. At some point, you have to recognize the difference between support and self-erasure. Support stands beside. Fixing stands in front. Support allows space for growth. Fixing blocks it. When you stop trying to save others, you are not abandoning them. You are giving them the dignity to take responsibility for their own lives. And in releasing that burden, you make room to care for yourself with the same compassion you so freely give away.
Sixth key point is the guilt nice people feel when they finally choose themselves, as if self-respect needs an apology.
The moment you say no, something inside you tightens. You replay the decision again and again, wondering if you were too harsh, too cold, too sudden. You feel the weight of disappointing someone, even when that someone has disappointed you many times. This guilt doesn't come from wrongdoing, it comes from conditioning. You were taught that being good means being available, and stepping back feels like breaking an unspoken rule. Nice people often mistake discomfort for proof of selfishness. When choosing yourself feels uneasy, you assume it must be wrong. But discomfort is not always a warning. Sometimes it is just unfamiliar ground. You spend so long prioritizing others that standing up for yourself feels unnatural, like wearing new shoes that haven't shaped your feet yet. The ache is not because the shoes are wrong, it's because you're not used to walking this way. There is also the fear of how others will see you once you stop overgiving. You worry they'll think you've changed, that you're no longer the same kind, dependable person they knew. And maybe you have changed. But growth often looks like distance to those who benefited from your silence. When people react strongly to your boundaries, it is rarely because the boundary is unfair. It is because access has been reduced and loss always makes noise. This guilt can be loud at first. It whispers that you should explain yourself, justify your choice, soften your stance. It urges you to go back to what is familiar, even if familiar was painful. But guilt is not a compass. It does not point toward truth. It points toward habit. And habits can be unlearned. Each time you choose yourself despite the guilt, the voice grows quieter. Not because you've hardened, but because you've healed. Choosing yourself is not an act of rejection. It is an act of alignment. You are not pushing others away, you are pulling yourself back. And when you begin to understand that your well-being matters as much as anyone else's, the guilt starts to loosen its grip. You realize you don't need permission to protect your energy. You don't need approval to honor your limits. And slowly, choosing yourself stops feeling like a crime and starts feeling like honesty. The seventh key point is the final truth that being nice is not the problem. It is the naivety that allows your heart to be used. You think that kindness alone is enough to protect you, that generosity will always be met with respect, that honesty will always be returned with honesty. But life is rarely that simple. The world does not owe you fairness, and not everyone plays by the values you hold dear. To survive with a soft heart, you must first understand that your warmth is precious. And precious things are not meant to be scattered recklessly. Nice people often confuse being good with being untouchable, as if a gentle soul cannot be harmed. You approach life like water, thinking you will flow around obstacles, and yet the current itself can erode your edges. The truth is, some people will test the limits of your kindness, not because they hate you, but because they are comfortable seeing what you will allow. And if you never define the edges, if you never set the boundaries, the current will carry you further than you intended, leaving exhaustion in place of peace. What makes this realization difficult is that it feels like a betrayal of who you are. You worry that protecting yourself will make you cold or distant, that firmness will erase your humanity. But clarity does not require harshness. It does not demand cruelty. You can be soft and still be strong. You can care deeply without being vulnerable to misuse. Boundaries are not walls. They are fences that let you decide who enters your space and under what conditions. They allow your kindness to be sustainable instead of disposable. Nice people often measure their worth by how much they give, forgetting that giving without discernment can become a kind of self-erasure. You think that love must be limitless, that generosity must be unconditional, that piety, NCE must be endless. But love without wisdom becomes a trap, a lesson repeated over and over with pain as the teacher. Protecting your heart is not selfish. It is the skill of discerning where your energy can grow and where it will be drained. It is the courage to say, I will love, but not at the cost of losing myself. When you finally accept this, your perspective shifts. You begin to see kindness not as a liability, but as a power that must be managed wisely. You learn to give with intention, to engage without surrendering your sense of self, to love without losing your boundaries. The world no longer feels like a place where your heart will constantly be bruised. Instead, it becomes a landscape where your soft heart can thrive, where your generosity can be genuine, and where your humanity can coexist with strength. You realize that the strongest people are not those who harden themselves. They are those who protect what is valuable while still allowing it to shine. In the quiet of this moment, let yourself feel the weight of what you've been carrying, and then notice that it does not need to stay. You can still be kind, you can still care, but kindness without awareness, care without boundaries, patience without limits, that is where the hurt finds you. From here on, your heart does not have to bear the cost of other people's choices. You can give generously, but not indiscriminately. You can love fully, but not blindly. Your softness is not a flaw. It is the essence of who you are. But softness without clarity becomes a shadow of your own strength. The clarity comes in recognizing your own worth, in seeing that your energy, your trust, your presence, these are valuable. They are not to be spent carelessly, and when you honor them, something shifts. You move through the world without fear of being used. You move without the burden of guilt. You move knowing that your boundaries are not walls, but a quiet declaration of self-respect. It will not always feel comfortable. That is the nature of growth. Old habits, old assumptions, old patterns of overgiving, they will whisper, trying to pull you back. Listen to them briefly, and then let them pass. What matters is the rhythm you choose now. A rhythm of balance, of care measured by wisdom, of strength rooted in gentleness. You are learning to protect what is yours without diminishing what you offer. There is freedom in this. Freedom from disappointment that you once carried as inevitability. Freedom from guilt that once shadowed every decision to honor yourself. Freedom from the exhaustion of giving to those who could never meet you where you were. And in that freedom, your heart begins to feel lighter, not smaller but stronger, more durable, more capable of genuine connection. Carry this quietly with you. Let it settle in your mind and your chest. Let it guide how you listen, how you speak, how you stand in the world. You do not have to stop being kind to survive. You do not have to shrink to stay safe. You simply need to know where to place your trust, how to protect your energy, and when to step back without shame. And when you do, every interaction, every relationship, every choice will be measured not by how much you give, but by how fully you honor yourself while still giving. That is where resilience and true strength begins.